Well, the Detroit Tigers lose in what could be Jack Flaherty's last start as a part of the organization. We'll talk about that and more all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, July 25th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Tigers is brought to you by Booking.com. Yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. So check out Booking.com for your stay today. Welcome in, welcome all, everybody. Happy Thursday. As the weekend approaches, the Detroit Tigers will finish up a 4-game series. That's numbers and math and the amount of games that it was. Today, as you're listening to this on Thursday, we are going to discuss Game 3 of this 4-game set against the AL Central Division leaders in the Cleveland Guardians, who improved to 61-40 on the season in a 2-1 victory over your Detroit Tigers, who fall to 50-53. This loss really felt like a dagger. And I don't necessarily mean like the season was back on and this one really ended it or anything. You know, I'm not trying to be that dramatic over one loss on a, Wednesday in July, but this one really kind of took the wind out of the sails for, I think, a lot of people, if you will. Not only is it just the outlook of the series where you're down 1-2 in obviously this series against Cleveland. You're heading into the deadline. You're starting to lose more than you have in the entire month of July, which credit where credit is due. They obviously were very, very hot, one of the hottest teams in baseball in July. But you also had a bullpen game on Tuesday. You now wasted a really solid Flaherty start. Not only just in the sense of, you wasted an outing in which your starting pitcher only gave up 1 earned run. He's also one of only 3 healthy starting pitchers you have. And you wasted that. And then you have a bullpen game / Kenta Maeda game on Thursday in the finale. It's really not an awesome outlook. You kind of needed, for as much as you can possibly need, to win a game on a Wednesday at the end of July when you're under 500. Wednesday's game. You really kind of needed to. And they couldn't get it done. They Cleveland's bullpen showed why they are one of the better bullpens in baseball. Tanner Bybee showed why he's a really solid pitcher. Hurt. Hopefully he's okay. Don't root for injuries ever. And then obviously Clase shuts the door again on you, but you're staring down the alley here at 1-4, 1 games of 4. That was horrible wording. You're staring down a road here where you are going to go 1-3 in Cleveland. You're going to take 1 of 4 games. And then you have Minnesota this weekend, and only 3 of your 5 members of your rotation are healthy. And in your rotation. I guess Kenta Maeda is healthy. He's just literally not a part of the rotation right now. And Flaherty, as we'll talk about later, is pretty darn likely to get moved on top of that. And all of that adds up to you also being 50-53, 3 games under 500. I'm not trying to ruin excitement or to, dunk in anybody's Cheerios here. Okay. I'm really not. If you want to keep being optimistic and at full steam ahead, this one game didn't change everything for you. More power to you. Truly. I admire it. I have no issue with that. I'm not trying to talk down on anybody or down to anybody here. It's just, for me personally, this really felt like momentum is slipping, and any momentum you did have, and I haven't wavered either, right? Like personally, I've been in, they're going to sell for the entire month of July despite the winning. And my whole rallying cry, if you will, was keep winning so that it makes it harder and that they do have a tough conversation. But I mean, to me, I'm not having a conversation about standing pat or buying when you're under 500. They haven't been 500 in 2 months. Despite the being one of the best teams in baseball in July, they still were under 500 on the season. So it really just feels like the momentum that they had is starting to slip, and part of that is the outlook of Thursday's game not being much brighter here. But let's talk about this game specifically a little bit more. We'll start with what went wrong, because obviously the Tigers did lose this one, like I said, by a score of 2-1. The offense just completely laid an egg. They were held to 1 run, and that 1 run was in the first inning. That was the third batter of the ball game. Matt Vierling hits a solo shot, and that's all you scored. And also this wasn't a case in which the Tigers had 9 hits and just weren't very good with RISP and couldn't bring anybody home. I don't think they had an at bat with a runner in scoring position. Yeah, they went 0 for 0 in RISP in this game because they only had 2 hits. They had 2 hits and 2 walks. They had 4 base runners, and one of them was a solo homer. So, and that also means they didn't get a runner past first base. So, yeah, like this was turning back the clock a little bit, right? The July, we've seen a lot more offense. It's been a lot more optimistic in terms of the offense. This was late May and June Detroit Tigers offense when the sky is falling and everyone's freaking out about how bad, myself included, the offense is. Now, and look, they have improved from that time. Okay, I'm not going to let one game just make me think go the opposite extreme either and be like, oh, they only had 2 hits against Tanner Bybee and a great bullpen, that they must absolutely suck again, and they're going to look like they have in June the next month. For my sanity, I hope that that's not true, but I also don't believe that that's true. We've seen improvements from a lot of players. Obviously, Winfield Perez, OPS up to 720, batting average around 260. Colt Keith has an OPS over 800 since the first week of May. Nonetheless, if you look at smaller sample sizes and get more and more recent with it, he's been hitting incredibly well. Matt Vierling, an above league average hitter this season, for as many issues or gripes as I may have with him. Riley Green, obviously all-star campaign outside of the month of May there. Carson Kelly has come around and been a much better hitter than he was the first month and a half of the season. So like this isn't just, again, I'm not trying to make it sound like like they're just right back to where they were in June, but you can be better than what they were at one point there for a solid 6 to 8 weeks and still not be very good, because that's how bad they were. You know what I mean? Everything's relative. We're just comparing to ourselves, I guess, as Matt Shepard once said to end the season. You know what I mean? So like if we're comparing 2 teams from earlier in the year, yeah, that's great. They improved. That doesn't mean it's a playoff lineup, though. That doesn't mean it's even like winning lineup. That doesn't even mean it's an above 500 lineup, just because it's better than when they were averaging like 2 runs a game for 4 weeks. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where I stand. And I think this game really perfectly epitomizes why they're going to trade Flaherty. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the stuff segment. But like, great pitching is awesome. And they held a team that's 20 games over 500 at 2 runs. But if they have the opportunity to trade Flaherty for a young bat, they're going to do it, just like they did with Lorenzen last year. Okay, and again, we'll break that down a little bit more in depth later on in the show. We got a lot more to talk about, though. We're going to, I don't know if you've heard this saying before, we're going to keep the ball rolling right after this. Got to talk today about our friends over at Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and their latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Also got to tell y'all about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the best in the business. They're an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. A lot of great features over at Game Time. We talk about them all the time. You have all-in pricing, which is like my favorite part of Game Time. You can see, if you use the feature, you can see your total completely up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout or anything like that. You can get a panoramic view of your seat before you buy it. And obviously, they have the Game Time guarantee. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow, wrapping up this series, talking about the series finale of this Cleveland series, previewing the weekend, talking more trade deadline stuff as always as well. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day, bringing you the biggest stories without all the screaming maybe that Fox Sports or ESPN give you on a daily basis. You can check it out for free on YouTube or subscribe, there, or watch it rather for free in the Amazon Fire TV channels app. So talking about what went right and what went wrong, we're starting off with what went wrong. Talked a lot about the offense there in the first segment. It's just, again, to put a bow on it, a lineup card that features Zach McKinstry and Javi Baez in it and has Matt Vierling as its 3-hitter is just still not the most competitive lineup on the planet Earth to me, So that's really all I'm trying to articulate at the end of the day. Some rough defense in this game. Colt Keith, the play's tough. It's I think that's probably a play he should make. But Brisky was not exactly wowing either. We'll talk about him in a second. That's a tough play, but it's a tough play. However, he has a negative 11 defensive run saves so far this season at second base. And one of the things we said going into the year, like one of my big points in the preview for Colt Keith this season was, I'm not worried that he's going to hit and figure out hitting eventually. I worry about how much value he's going to bring defensively. His OAA is actually not bad. It's around net 0, which means he's got fine range. He's an athletic dude. He's big, but he's pretty athletic. But defensive run saved is more about execution of balls put in play, and he is just struggling mightily in that department. And this was a ball off the glove that he, again, probably should have, could have, whatever terminology you want to use there, probably should have made it, I guess is what I'm going to say. So I think that kind of leans into the conversation of what to do with him in the future defensively. You obviously want the bat in the lineup. You hope that continues to grow and even get better and better and better. So is he the first baseman of the future? I think it's a legitimate question. I think it's a fair question. I also think that this fan base says that about everybody. And like, I don't blame them. That's not me. That's not being condescending. It's just like we say that about Malloy. We say that about Carpenter. We say that about Colt Keith. We say that about Justice Bigby. Like we say that about like every single Jace Young apparently is not looking good at third base. That's somebody that we're going to throw our hat into the, like, how many did, and then we, overarching all of that, we still have Spencer Torkelson. Like, we can't have 9 first basemen. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So I think there's a possibility, and I think if he hits, they're gonna find a spot for him, right? That's why Torkelson got demoted. He wasn't a very good defensive first baseman, but on top of that, was not hitting, so the spot for him went away. I do think that Colt Keith will be here. It's just a matter of in what capacity. I think it's in the team's best interest to play him at second the remainder of this season, see if he can figure it out, make adjustments, and be better as the season goes along. But it has not been a magnificent display of defense over at second base for him so far this season. And that's going to be a huge talking point come the winter, especially considering, again, how many players kind of fit a somewhat similar bill to that. Bo Brisky did not look great in this ball game. He now has a 4.46 ERA on the season. This guy is, for those who follow soccer, okay, if you follow European soccer specifically, all of my Premier League fans, I root for Watford, which is super embarrassing to say out loud. It's a long story. I thought that it was funny that when I was like 10, I thought it was funny that they called themselves the Hornets, but their logo and emblem was a moose. That didn't make any sense to me. I thought it was funny, so I picked them. They were for years a yo-yo team, right? It was like, okay, they're in the Premier League, and then they're immediately down, and then they're back up, and then they're down back to the championship, and then they're up and then down. And they used to call them a yo-yo team. And that's just how I feel about Bo Brisky's role in this bullpen. That's like the best way I can articulate it. He does really well in low leverage. He goes multiple innings in low leverage. He starts getting promoted and getting more and more high leverage. He gets really high leverage. Then he has 3 or 4 bad outings in a row, and he goes back to inning eating low leverage. He's done that like 4 times over just in this season, and he didn't even start the year on the major league roster, and he still managed to somehow do that 3 or 4 times this year. It's been pretty frustrating. We've talked about it ad nauseum. This dude needs a legitimate pitch that moves horizontally. He's got a really good changeup. The fastball, I think, plays really well out of the pen. Needs something to move side to side, brother. And the slider, while it's been in the lab and he's been working on it, is still very much clearly a work in progress. Let's talk about what went right. I mean, the Tigers were tied with Cleveland going into the bottom of the 8th in this ballgame. This wasn't some disaster, you got blown out and it was just a horrible performance. It was a tie ball game with an inning and a half left. And the Tigers just couldn't hold on for a lot of reasons we've already talked about. So Matt Vierling leadoff homer. It was his only hit on the day. And I still maintain with what I said earlier. I don't think a super good lineup is Matt Vierling batting third, but he's proven that he can be a part of one, right? His OPS is almost up to 750 as he continues to have this power surge this season. I say leadoff homer. He was, again, the 3 hitter. He was not leading off in this ball game, but first inning home run rather, and it went opposite field, which had everybody talking and was somewhat of a surprise. I believe that's the first opposite field home run he's hit, and it was on a fastball, and I think that that's beautiful because what he's been turning on this year isn't even really fastballs. He's been crushing sliders and changeups that are in the strike zone, low and inside. That has been his bread and butter. He's been homers like crazy on those pitches, right? So seeing him, and we've talked about it a lot, seeing him attack more and be more effective on velocity, even if it is the other way, I don't care. Just make it right. Like I don't care if you hit every fastball down the first baseline and pull every slider. Great, as long as it's in play, brother. Godspeed. So like I think that was really nice to see. I don't know if it's a fluke or if it's a sign of things to come. Only time will tell. But it was nice to see. Regardless, Javi hitting 9th is something that I have legitimately on things that went right. He hasn't hit ninth. I believe Jason Beck said before the game, who covers the Tigers. He's the Tigers beat writer for MLB.com since 2017. And I'm just hoping that this is a slow, methodical, like we're close to the finish line. We're slow, we're dragging our feet. We're really trying to make it not happen, but at the same time, we're moving and we're slowly getting there. And he slowly moved down in the lineup, and now he's hitting 9, and his defensive numbers aren't even elite anymore. And it's like, are we almost at the finish line? We'll see. But I do think that it is somewhat telling that he hit 9th for the first time in, 7 years. Let's keep the ball rolling. I can't stop saying it. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's the only thing my brain understands as a transition into an ad break, apparently. But we're going to talk about Jack Flaherty a lot right after this. Got to talk to y'all about our friends over at Booking.com. With summer travels heating up, especially for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals, because this episode of Locked On Tigers is brought to you by Booking.com. Yeah, a Yankees fan can have a great time in Boston. I mean, we have, even if you're just going from Queens to the Bronx, we just finished up a fantastic Subway series. Francisco Lindor absolutely crushed the New York Yankees. And you can go anywhere in the country, even your rival city, and catch a great ball game and then stay at a family-friendly resort or a hotel that overlooks a stadium. Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this season. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. So book today at Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. Booking.com. Yeah. Also got to tell y'all about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, because unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch those winnings roll in. So you can get in on all the daily action with your friends and become a part of the Prize Picks community today. You can 100 times your money. You can turn $10 into $1,000 on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Again, just more or less on stats. Really fun. Starting, pitching, strikeouts. I'm a broken record with it, but it's one of my favorite things to look at. You can also take a look at home runs, RBIs, hits, you name it. You can look and put it as a part of your Prize Picks play today. So download the app and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. So Jack Flaherty started this game 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, no earned, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. The fastball looked phenomenal, as it has for a majority of this season. And he threw around 100 pitches again, which is great. That's great for advertising him to other teams. Talking about, the back, it's not an issue. He's thrown 90 to 100 pitches, a couple of outings in a row. We haven't had a hiccup since he got the last injection in his back. He has been unbelievably effective. In this game specifically, outside of just fastball effectiveness in general, the slider was a work of art, and again, it always is. He's a slider fastball pitcher, but this was really fascinating how he attacked lefties. So when you watch Flaherty start, it's most of the time going to be 1 of 2 pitches, but lefties is different because they're not used to having a right-handed pitcher challenge them with a slider. That's a rarity. A lot of righties will just go, opposite platoon, I'm not throwing you a slider. And so I think it's fascinating when he does, because there's 2 things he does with it. It is either low and he's trying to hit that back foot, right? That the classic saying, trying to hit the back foot there of the opposite platoon on a slider. So he tries to do that and get people to chase low, and people who think it's a fastball low in the zone, and then kind of it falls off the table there. But then he also will go backdoor in the zone and try to get a called strike on a slider to the opposite platoon, which is just so difficult to do consistently, because if you miss outside, I guess that's just a ball outside. But if you miss inside, you're talking about the no-no zone. You're talking about the area in the zone where a lefty especially can really turn and burn on that. So his approach to the game and just how well he has been able to efficiently and effectively execute, a lot of E words there, his plan on a start-to-start basis is really, really impressive. So, you know what? If this is it, if this is the last start of Jack Flaherty's Tigers career, hats off. Massive, massive success story for Flaherty, turning it around. Great success story for Fetter and Lund and Nieves, obviously helping him turn that around, and a really, really good identification of talent and a potential turnaround by this front office and Scott Harris and co. So just want to put that out there before we inevitably do talk about the trade possibility here in a second. Let's talk stuff. We can just get right into it here. So, I mean, was this his last game as a Tiger? I would say yes. And the only way I would say no is that technically he does have one more start on his schedule until the deadline, but I think it's like deadline day or maybe like the day before deadline. It's somewhere around there when his next Tiger start would be. So I think the only chance it's not is if they just don't have a deal done by then. I fully expect him to get traded. Evan Petzold of The Freep put out an article where he talked a little bit about the Skubal, trade possibilities and how the Tigers would have to be blown away, as we've talked about a lot here. But when it comes to Flaherty, he in that piece, in the title of it even, go read the article, support Evan Petzold, fantastic human being, fantastic at his job. He almost said verbatim, they plan on trading Flaherty. And the one piece of leverage they have is that Flaherty has never accepted a qualifying offer. So in theory, they could go, hey, you're not giving us enough. We're just going to give him the qualifying offer. He either accepts it and we have him on the team again next year, or he declines it and we get an extra draft pick after the first round next season, right? That's how QOs work. So I think they have a little bit of leverage. It's not a lot. It's not like the difference between a low-end prospect and an elite prospect. And I don't think you're going to get anything like too crazy for him because he is a rental at the end of the day. And I understand there's a camp of people that really want him extended or to consider an extension. I'll put it this way. I do think the right move is to trade him. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, he is a rental. If you really want him back and you are really, really just, bent on, I need Jack Flaherty back in a Tigers uniform next year, then go after him aggressively in the winter and you can just do that. And you can do the qualifying offer thing, whatever you want to do. But when it comes to his value, the back thing is that no one's just ignoring the back issue. This dude has not been very good for the last 2 or 3 years prior to this season. He's having a fantastic year, right? He's clearly resolved a lot of issues. And he has a back issue. So, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of I don't know how much money I'm willing to invest in Flaherty long term. I don't know how many years the Tigers would be willing to put, and he's not that old, right? Him and Skubal I think, are only a year apart in age, which is a great argument for why they should hold on to him. That is, if you're in that camp, that is one of the biggest arguments that you should have, right? He is still very young. But at the end of the day, there's enough red flags for me to maybe be somewhat hesitant on extending him between, again, the fact that he's been good for half of one season in the last 3 years and the fact that he's already had to get an injection in his back twice, already missed 2 spots in his rotation in the last month. And you're talking about forking over. The AAV wouldn't bother me, I don't think, unless we end up giving him like $25 million a year, which I can't imagine the front office is going to do to anybody, nonetheless, Jack Flaherty. But I think there is enough reason for me to not go, you know what, this front office just needs to extend him no matter what. That being said, he's been awesome. His ERA is sub-3, and he clearly likes working with the staff here, likes the players here, and has no issue being a Tiger. I am all for retaining people that want to be here, but the outlook of this season, you have to move him at the deadline. And if you really, really want him back, then go after him again in the winter. It doesn't happen very often that teams do that. That's kind of like what I don't know, media and front offices sell people all the time. The only time in recent memory that's really happened off the top of my head in baseball was Aroldis Chapman with the Yankees and Cubs. Like outside of that, it's not something that happens super often. If they do trade him away, I would be under the expectation that he's not going to be a Tiger ever again. But if you really are keen on that, that is the route they're going to take. They are not going to hold on to Flaherty. They're not just going to hold on to him for a team that's sub 500 in hopes that they can maybe re-sign him in the winter when he's probably going to want to hit the open market after being not very good for the last 3 years and then having a borderline career year. He wants to hit the open market too. He's not gonna omit himself, right? It takes two to tango. He's not gonna just not go onto the open market unless somebody ridiculously overpays his value to extend him. He's not just gonna not want to go onto the open market after having the best year he's had since before COVID. So all of those things considered, I think you have to trade him no matter what you think in terms of keeping him long term or what the Tigers season looks like. And it's kind of between a rock and a hard place, but like that I think is the move that they kind of have to go with. It also, now that we're done with that conversation, we got to wrap up here. I also think that Carson Kelly is likely to be moving, and we'll have way more trade talk as we get closer and closer to deadline day. Don't you worry. We're going to have a lot more trade deadline content rather, and have a lot more of these conversations as we get closer and closer to deadline day. But just because this may be his last start, I wanted to have the conversation with him specifically today. I think Carson Kelly's a candidate. Dylan Dingler has been setting the world on fire in Toledo. So I think that there's a really legitimate argument for Kelly to get traded. And then I guess maybe Rogers, but he has multiple years of control. And I think that teams are going to be more inclined to trade for Kelly given the defense and offense combo that he's put up and the fact that he's a rental. So you probably do that, call up Dingler, give him his first cup of coffee in the majors here. The one very legitimate counter to, well, don't trade Flaherty is who are you going to start the rest of the season? Olsen's hurt. Mize hopefully is close. It's not an arm injury, so hopefully he's somewhat close to coming back. Maeda got demoted. Like, I mean, you're going to have two starting pitchers before you know it. And that's obviously not where anybody wants to be. You have Matt Manning that's hurt down in Toledo. We're going to see. But that is a very, very, very fair point. And that leads us into today's ball game where you have Kenta Maeda likely to pitch a bulk of the innings in what is probably going to be another bullpen type game versus Gavin Williams, who throws really, really hard. And the Tigers didn't hit very well early, at least in the game last time we faced him. What was that, a couple of weeks ago? So that's all I got. I appreciate you all for tuning in as always. And look, as I always say, I think the beautiful part about this game and sports in general is that there's a million right answers. There's a million ways to get to the end. So I hope it came across, right? Like, I'm not trying to say like, oh, you're an idiot or you're stupid or you're wrong if you do want to hold on to Flaherty. That's just wanted to throw out there kind of where I stand presently. All right. I appreciate you all. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers. As always, we'll be back tomorrow talking more about, the trade deadline looming, wrapping up this series, and then previewing the weekend as well. Okay. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. And I'll catch you all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.